was the boogeyman.
As a matter of fact, it was.
What the hell is going on?
Jason fucking Voorhees, that's what's going on.
Every town has an Elm Street.
Welcome everybody, I'm Santino Perrone, and welcome back to Santino's Movie Reviews. Today, we will review the big three of the horror world. I will be talking about all the Halloween movies, all the Friday the 13th movies, and all of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. I will also be showing you my rankings for the movies. Before I get started with today's movie franchise review, I want to remind you that if you haven't yet, please subscribe and turn on notifications. That way you're up to date whenever Perrone Productions posts some new material. This October, Halloween 4, Halloween Lives is going to be coming out, so definitely want to stay tuned with that. Today, we're going to start things off with a bang, and we're going to go with Michael Myers in the Halloween franchise. Let's review it. The original Halloween that kicked everything off came out October 25th, 1978, and that was written and directed by John Carpenter, along with Deborah Hill. Also, please be aware that some of these movies I'm talking about contain spoilers, so if you haven't seen them, click off the video and go watch them, then come back. The very first Halloween kicked off horror in a brand new way and spooked audiences across theaters. The first Halloween stars Donald Pleasence as Michael Myers' psychiatrist, Dr. Loomis, and introduces Jamie Lee Curtis, who was a then 19-year-old who made her feature film debut as a high school student/babysitter whose name is Laurie Strode. Laurie Strode is known as the ultimate final girl in horror, and she appeared in 7 of the Halloween movies. Fun fact about the Michael Myers mask is that in the first 2 films, Michael wears a Captain Kirk mask that is just painted white. The mask, which was made from a cast of William Shatner's face, was originally used in the 1975 horror film The Devil's Reign. The actor who plays Michael Myers is Nick Castle. Take a look at my Halloween 1978 poster. Halloween 2 came out October 30th, 1981, directed by Rick Rosenthal, and took place on the same night as the original Halloween, and ultimately was supposed to be where the franchise stopped. Halloween 2 brings back the same cast from the first one and is known as one of the best horror sequels to be invented. A majority of the movie takes place in a hospital where Laurie is. It has the iconic nurse stabbed in the back and lifted up scene. I also have a NECA action figure of Dr. Loomis and Michael from this exact movie. This was originally supposed to be the end of Michael Myers and the Boogeyman storyline, as I said before, because Laurie shoots Michael in the eyes and Dr. Loomis blows himself and Michael up, setting the entire place on fire. I also have this Halloween 2 cup. Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, is known as the black sheep of the Halloween franchise by many fans because, well, it doesn't have Michael Myers in it. Season of the Witch was supposed to be a new Halloween movie, just a different spooky story. So John Carpenter had the idea of releasing new spooky stories each year and titling them all Halloween. However, fans did not like the idea John Carpenter was putting out with this movie, and Michael wasn't in it, so this movie became hated on by fans. But it is a great movie to watch on its own if you can separate it from the title. Literally all you have to do is take out the Halloween 3 and just look at it as Season of the Witch. Once people could do that, they appreciated this movie a lot more and it became kind of liked. The Silver Shamrock theme became a well-known feature and the 3 masks used in this film are popular. In David Gordon Green's Halloween, he actually pays homage to the masks by having trick-or-treaters wearing them. A lot of fans wanted Michael Myers to come back. Hence the reason Halloween 4 came about, which is titled The Return of Michael Myers. And here we are at the turning point in the franchise. Halloween 4 is great, don't get me wrong. It has one of the best opening intros and definitely feels very fallish, which is great considering the filming begun in April. Halloween 4 introduces Laurie's daughter, Jamie Lloyd, played by a young Danielle Harris, who is now living with a foster family because Laurie is supposedly dead. The movie also has one of the more well-known endings in the franchise, where Jamie is standing at the top of the staircase wielding a pair of scissors in her clown costume after killing her foster mother, similar to how her Uncle Michael did in the opening scene of the first Halloween after killing his sister.
Judith.
1 year later, on October 13th, 1989, Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers came out.
Most people aren't a huge fan of Halloween 5, and while I can appreciate it for being what it is, it definitely isn't my favorite either. I enjoy the first act and second act, but how they finish the movie and leaving it off weirdly with a man in a black coat with a black hat and steel boots busting Michael out of jail is very odd. The mask for Michael in this movie is hated on a lot as well. However, Donald Pleasance does an amazing job as Dr. Loomis once again. Jamie's character is also a mute in more than 90% of this movie. That was another thing that kind of turned me off. I will admit, I do like the ending a little bit because it leaves off very open, and I believe Daniel Harris's performance is incredible.
Halloween 6, or Halloween The Curse of Michael Myers, came out September 29th, 1995. This one is also kind of a black sheep of the Halloween franchise because many fans either hate it or love it. It features the idea that there's a cult behind Michael Myers' story and that he's part of the thorn symbol, which is pretty much just rooted in evil.
While a lot of people dislike The Curse of Michael Myers, it stands out for many reasons. It also depends on what version you watch. The producer's cut focuses on more the cult aspect, whereas the theoretical cut does not show nearly as much. I prefer the theoretical cut of this movie, and I believe this movie has some cool kills to it, and I enjoy the mask for Michael. It is also Paul Rudd's very first movie, so congrats to Paul Rudd for kicking Michael Myers' ass. A lot of people don't like the producer's cut because it is heavily implied that Michael was forced to produce an offspring with his niece, Jamie, for the cult.
Me personally, I'll tell you what I think about it when I tell you my rankings for the Halloween franchise. Coming right up. Halloween H2O, the 7th movie in the franchise, takes place 20 years after the very first movie. And this is where the timelines start to get a little tricky. So some new directors came along and they said, forget everything that happened in the 3rd, 4th, 5th movie, and the 6th one, and just focus on the first 2. This one takes place 20 years later after that night, which they brought back Jamie Lee Curtis for this role.
Halloween H2O, 20 years later, disregards all the films except for the first and second Halloween. Jamie Lee Curtis returns to her role as Laurie Strode, and we learn she faked her death and changed her name to Carrie Tate, and moved to California where we learn she has a son, John. But in this timeline, she never had her daughter Jamie. She teaches at a university.
Halloween H2O has one of the more iconic endings where Michael Myers gets his head chopped off.
And this was once again supposed to be the end of the franchise. Jamie Lee Curtis has even said publicly she thought the franchise should have ended here. This movie also has some good comedy and jokes in it because LL Cool J is in it, and his character is hilarious.
Halloween Resurrection completely disregards the ending of H2O where he gets his head chopped off, and makes it so that he swapped his body out. And a lot of people didn't like this. Halloween Resurrection, there's a lot of things that's iffy about that. At the end of this movie, Michael Myers gets electrocuted and burned, and a lot of people weren't a huge fan of that ending as well with Busta Rhymes.
In the 8th installment, we see Michael kill Laurie at the start of the movie, and fans are kind of left speechless. Michael goes back home where some teens who are part of a film challenge are setting up cameras and staying at the Myers house overnight for an award to see if they can survive. This movie has Busta Rhymes in it, and he says one of the most well-known lines in the franchise, actually. Here it is.
Trick or treat, motherfucker.
And now the reboot. Rob Zombie's Halloween came out in 2007, followed by his Halloween 2, which came out in 2009. Both were released, I believe, in middle of August 13th and August 28th, I believe. A lot of people either, like I said, with Halloween 6, these are very similar. A lot of people hate them or love them.
Rob Zombie brought the franchise back to life as much as he could by doing his own remake and altering the storyline a bit with an entire new cast as well. Many people either like or dislike this movie strongly. Scout Taylor Compton steps in the very big shoes to fill of Laurie Strode, while Tyler Mane plays the role of Michael Myers, and Malcolm McDowell plays Dr. Loomis. Fun fact, Rob Zombie brought back Danielle Harris, who played Jamie Lloyd in Halloween 4 and 5, to play the role of Laurie Strode's friend and the sheriff's daughter, Annie Brackett, from the original Halloween. Brad Dourif, the voice of Chucky, also plays a role in Rob Zombie's Halloween and Halloween 2 as the sheriff. In the second installment of Rob Zombie's Halloween, we follow the same cast, and it's somewhat similar to the way the original first two Halloween movies played out. However, in this version, we see a homeless version of Michael, and this version also has two endings. One where Laurie stabs him in his heart a few good times, and one where the cops blow him away with their guns.
Rob Zombie definitely took his own unique spin on them, which I can appreciate. They're definitely not my favorites by any means, and I think I might have watched them twice, both of them twice. The Rob Zombie Halloween movies aren't too special to me. I really prefer the original Michael Myers and the original storyline. And now, the good stuff. In a Way, featured by some of the worst stuff. In 2018, David Gordon Green came along and directed Halloween 2018. Again, separate timeline now. David Gordon Green told fans, disregard every single Halloween movie except the very first one. So, 40 years later, from 1978 Halloween, we have David Gordon Green's 2018 Halloween, which features Laurie Strode 40 years later, suffering from that trauma of that night, and she is a badass in this movie.
Halloween 2018. This follows the night of the original 1978 Halloween, set 40 years later and disregards all the other films as I previously said. Laurie is a badass mother and grandmother, and has her house all booby-trapped, waiting for the day Michael breaks out of the mental institution he has been locked up in for the past 40 years. Jamie Lee Curtis was very pleased to reprise her role in this movie. Her daughter Karen in this film was played by Judy Greer, and Laurie's granddaughter Allison is played by Andy Medichek. This film also brings back the original actor for Michael Myers, Nick Castle, but he does not play the role of Michael Myers as much as James Jude Courtney does in this film. In my opinion, David Gordon Green could have ended it with burning Michael and having that be that, but that wasn't the case.
In 2021, Halloween Kills came out, which David Gordon Green also directed.
While many people aren't huge fans of the ending to Halloween Kills, the movie itself is pretty badass. The very first Michael Myers scene where we see him coming out of the burning house that Laurie left him to die in and absolutely destroying the firefighters is a wild scene. Laurie is mainly in the hospital for all of this movie, similar to how she is in the original Halloween 2 movie back in 1981. Michael seeks revenge as the town is on the hunt for him, which they do ultimately attempt to kill him, but he kills more than half of them in return. Halloween Kills showed us that we are very easy to judge people by who we think they are instead of who they really are, and it also featured an unnecessary suicide, which I didn't feel added to the plot at all. A plus about this movie is that the poster looks incredible. Another awesome thing about Halloween Kills is that it opens up with a 1978 flashback. It turned out amazing, so well done to them. We see a few characters from the first Halloween movie make a reappearance in this one as well. Lindsay, for example, Nurse Marion Chambers, and Sheriff Lee Brackett.
And then last year, October 14th, 2022, David Gordon Green released Halloween Ends, his perfect ending to his trilogy of the Halloween movies. Halloween Ends has one of the lowest ratings on Rotten Tomatoes and Letterboxd for any of the Halloween movies. Personally, what did I think about it? I hated it, I'm not going to lie. I'd love to hear what you guys think. I have really yet to see a positive review on Halloween Ends.
Where could it all go wrong? Let me start by saying the trailer to this movie is better than the actual movie, and it shows an epic final battle between Laurie and Michael and looks amazing. Yeah, nope. We got fooled. David Gordon Green had the idea of throwing romance into this film and having Laurie's granddaughter fall in love with a psycho who is played by Rowan Campbell. His character is Corey Cunningham and is normal until he meets Michael, who is in this movie dying in a sewer. Michael seems to transfer his evilness into Corey, and the two kind of pair up until Corey wants to be on his own and steals Michael's mask from him, going around and killing people in Haddonfield. Then Michael finds his mask, and Laurie kills him and carries his body to an industrial shredder, which I hated. This ending absolutely sucked. The entire movie did, really. It could have been a lot better, to say the least. I believe Halloween Ends' main message is that evil can be passed on by person to person.
Michael Myers was in it maybe for 8 or 9 minutes, if that tells you anything. The story didn't focus on Laurie and Michael like the trailer depicted it would. So it was kind of a bummer. I went to the theaters to see that with a bunch of my family members, and we all walked out very disappointed. However, 2018 Halloween that David Gordon Green directed was, in my opinion, a masterpiece, and definitely one of my favorite Halloweens. The Halloween franchise itself consists of 13 films. Like I said though, there's 3 different timelines. So it all depends on which way you want to go. You can go the original one, which is movies 1 through 6, the H2O timeline, which is 1, 2, Part 7 and Part 8, I believe, and then the H40 timeline, which would be the first one, the 2018 one, Halloween Kills, and Halloween Ends. Then you also have Rob Zombie's Halloween, which has nothing to do with any of the original ones. It's just his Halloween and his Halloween 2. So there's technically 4 different timelines within the Halloween franchise. And now for my favorite part, I will be telling you all what I have as my ranking list for the Halloween movies. So, in 13th place, I have 2022's Halloween Ends. In 12th place, I have Rob Zombie's first Halloween. In 11th place, I have Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. Coming in at number 10, I have Halloween Resurrection. Number 9, I have Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. While this movie does not have Michael Myers in it, I appreciate it for what it's worth. So, if I didn't put it in the Halloween rankings, let alone the movie by itself is a good watch for October, for Halloween season. At number 8, I have Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. Lucky number 7, I have 2021 Halloween Kills. At number 6, I have Halloween H2O. And here we go, my top 5. At number 5, I have Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. Number 4, I have Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. I know, I'm going to be hated for putting that so high, but really it's all about opinion. Like I said, I'm really interested to see what you guys think about it. The thing is though, I really enjoy the theoretical cut more than the producer's cut. When it comes down to it, there are 2 very different versions of the movies. I'm going to attach a link that was created by Haunted Hippie, which if you haven't yet, definitely go subscribe to her account. So definitely go check this video out. She explains the difference between Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, theoretical cut, and the producer's cut. Like I said, she makes amazing content. So definitely go subscribe and check out her work and give her a like. And now, my top 3 Halloween movies. In 3rd place, I have the original Halloween 2. In 2nd place, I have David Gordon Green's Halloween 2018. And if you haven't guessed by now, my favorite one, the best one, is the original 1978 Halloween movie.
I also have every single Halloween movie. While not displayed in this photo, this is a majority of them on DVD.
Alright, that wraps up me talking about the Halloween franchise, and now it is time to get into the summer mood, because we are going to Camp Crystal Lake. Let's talk about Friday the 13th. And now we've arrived at Camp Crystal Lake. Friday the 13th, definitely one of the most iconic slasher franchises imaginable. The Friday the 13th movies will always hold a special place in my heart because they're so rewatchable. No matter what one you throw in, none of them ever gets old, and they're all different in their own way, and I find that awesome. I had to switch things up and get out of my Michael Myers hoodie. Now I'm wearing my Friday the 13th Part 2 t-shirt, which I just ordered on Redbubble. Came out amazing. I love the design, love the poster. I'll put the link in the bio of this video for those who want to check it out. But let's just dive right into it. The Friday the 13th franchise has a total of 12 films, which is the second highest out of the 3 here, with Halloween coming in first, with 13. I wish Friday the 13th had 13 films. That would be amazing. Maybe someday they will. I guess we'll see. The very first Friday the 13th movie came out May 9th in 1980 and was directed by Sean S. Cunningham.
The very iconic Friday the 13th. When most people begin watching these, they expect to see the hockey masked killer Jason Voorhees right away because, Well, everyone knows the name Jason Voorhees, and they know he's the killer of Friday the 13th and that he wears a hockey mask. However, this movie hides the killer until the very end, and when we find out it's actually Jason's mother, Pamela Voorhees, it is such an awesome reveal. Betsy Palmer does a terrific job playing the role of a psychotic mother seeking revenge for the death of her son Jason, who drowned while the camp counselors weren't paying attention to him. The first movie also stars a young Kevin Bacon and Adrienne King, who plays Alice, the final girl. The ending scene to this movie where Jason jumps up from the lake and pulls Alice's canoe down with him is terrifying, and so is her final line in the film. When the cops tell her they found no boy, she replies with, "Then he's still there."
Friday the 13th Part 2 came out in 1981, 1 year after the first movie, and that was directed by Steve Miner.
Part 2, we get to see the young adult version of Jason. In this movie, he is the one seeking revenge after witnessing his mother being decapitated by Alice at the end of the first film. The start of this movie shows Jason killing Alice right off the bat. Jason is wearing overalls with a potato sack for a mask with one hole cut for his good eye to see out of. And I love this look. A lot of people also expect the hockey mask in the first two movies, but the hockey mask isn't actually introduced to the franchise until the third film. Jenny, the main character in this movie, is badass, and I love her outfit and style she has going on. She's definitely either my first or second favorite final girl in the entire franchise. That's mainly because how smart she is. To kill Jason, Jenny uses his mother's sweater and tricks him in making him believe that she's his mother. This leads Jason to become very confused and distracted enough where Jenny can pick up his own knife and stab him with it.
Friday the 13th Part 3 came out 1 year after Part 2, and that was also directed by Steve Miner.
Part 3 was made in 3D, and you can see this in the opening credits, some close-up scenes, and some kills. This movie is a little cheesy, but it's such a good 80s movie. The iconic hockey mask gets introduced in this film, and Jason wears it for the entire second half of the movie. The main character in this film, Chris Higgins, who I absolutely love and is actually my home screen currently, is played by Dana Kimmel, and she gives Jason the classic axe in the head at the end of this movie and gives him the crack in his mask, which we will see later on. Chris is definitely in my top 3 for final girls throughout the franchise.
Friday the 13th Part 4, the final chapter, came out 2 years after Part 3, and that was directed by Joseph Zito, and ultimately, this movie was supposed to be where the franchise ended.
Part 4 is definitely a fan favorite for a lot of people, and I definitely love the opening scene and how it shows flashbacks about everything that has happened in the first 3 films leading up to this very point. The directors and producers did this because this was supposed to be the final Friday the 13th movie. Jason does ultimately end up getting killed in this film after a young boy, Tommy Jarvis, and his sister play with Jason's head similar to how Jenny does at the end of Part 2.
Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning, came out March 22nd, 1985, and that was directed by Danny Steinman.
Now we follow a troubled teenage Tommy Jarvis, played by John Shepard, as he struggles with life and keeps having hallucinations of Jason Voorhees. Tommy is staying in a camp for troubled teens, and when a fellow student gets axed to death by another student, Tommy is shocked. Fans are led to believe it's Tommy killing people throughout this entire movie, but it was actually the father of the student who got axed. Roy is a paramedic and throws on a Jason costume to cover his tracks. Some people don't like this, while others appreciate this movie for what it is worth. I rewatched this recently and honestly can see why people really love this one. It's a fun watch that makes people want to keep watching and see how it all ends.
And then on August 1st, 1986, Friday the 13th Part 6 came out, Jason Lives, and that was directed by Tom McLaughlin.
This is the turning point in the Friday the 13th franchise, where at this point, if you're still watching them, this movie would probably be the make it or break it movie. We now see an adult Tommy Jarvis accidentally resurrecting Jason after wanting to burn his corpse to ensure he was truly dead. I guess that's why you don't dig up people's graves. That'll teach you a lesson, Tommy. When Jason is revived, he becomes almost supernatural and has super strength powers, tearing people's arms and heads right off and even bending people right in half. I enjoy this movie, and it is one of my favorites because I love the look of Jason, and I love the ending to this film where Tommy puts Jason back in his resting place at Camp Crystal Lake, tied to a large rock at the bottom. We have Tom Matthews playing the role of Tommy in this film, alongside Jennifer Cook, who plays the role of the sheriff's daughter, Megan.
Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood, came out May 13th, 1988, and that was directed by John Carl Buechler.
Part 7, The New Blood, is one of the most underrated movies of the franchise in my opinion. We follow Tina, played by Larpark Lincoln, a girl who has telekinetic powers and who accidentally killed her father at Camp Crystal Lake when she was just a child. Her mother and doctor agree to bring her back to the camp to see if her progress will improve or deteriorate. Tina gets the idea to see if she can release her father from the bottom of the lake, but in doing so, she actually releases Jason Voorhees, who is now just about fully decayed, looking super badass with his spine showing. I'm not too crazy about the ending to this movie, and how it ends not all that satisfying, but the movie itself is pretty cool.
Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, came out 1 year after the 7th movie in 1989, and that was directed by Rob Hedden.
When it comes to Part 8, I used to like this one, but after rewatching it 4 or 5 times, it grew on me that this installment isn't all that great. We follow Jason on a cruise, killing teens, and then in the last half hour, I believe, is when he finally gets to Manhattan. The title to this film is very misleading, and that pissed off many fans. I do really like the swamp look to Jason in this film, though. Similar to Chris Higgins in Part 3, the main character in this story, Rennie, has a similar backstory and a past encounter with Jason Voorhees.
The 9th installment in the Friday the 13th franchise is called Jason Goes to Hell. This is one of the titles that doesn't feature Friday the 13th. This came out August 13th, 1993, and was directed by Adam Marcus.
Jason Goes to Hell is not a fan favorite by any means, and that's mainly because the storyline gets confusing and messy in this 9th movie. First off, Jason gets blown up in the first 10 minutes of the film, and his spirit is the thing corrupting people and making them kill in this movie. We find out Jason wasn't an only child, and that only a family member can kill Jason with a special dagger. There is also a bounty hunter who has been trying to track Jason down for many years. I don't hate this movie, and that's mainly because it's different and sticks out to me. The ending is awesome, where we see Freddy Krueger's glove reach up and grab Jason's mask and pull it down to hell.
And the 10th installment, Jason X, another Friday the 13th movie to not feature the title Friday the 13th in its title. However, this one came out April 26th, the day before my birthday, in 2002. And this was directed by James Isaac.
Jason X shows Jason being locked up somewhere now and escaping, but then being trapped in a cryogenic freezer type thing with a girl named Rowan, who was in charge of him, played by Alexa Doig. Many years later in the future, humans find him and Rowan both frozen and bring them both on board their spaceship and thaw them out. Jason then wakes up and starts killing once again, and once destroyed, he just so happens to fall in a machine that rebuilds lost tissue and creates what we all know as Uber Jason. Which the look is cool, but in my opinion, not my style for Jason. This movie didn't do so great because of its limited budget and not a lot of people backing it. I also actually have this movie on VHS, and I have it displayed in my movie room. I love the poster for Jason X.
And then Freddy vs. Jason was released in 2003, and fans have been wanting this for years and years, and they finally got it, but I'm not going to talk about that quite yet. I'll talk about that more when I jump onto the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. However, in 2009, on February 13th, director Marcus Nispel came along and released the Friday the 13th remake.
The 2009 remake of Friday the 13th, directed by Marcus Nispel, is a decent remake and definitely felt cool by combining pieces of the first, second, and third original movie storyline into this one movie. It lacked the special feeling for me mainly because it didn't give off that 80s slasher vibe and it felt too modern. Also, the look for Jason is pretty bland in my opinion, but a plus about this remake would be Jason's underground lair. It was pretty cool and different. Michael Bay was the producer on this movie, just as he was for the 2010 Nightmare on Elm Street remake, which I will discuss soon.
And now I'm going to share with all of you my personal rankings for the Friday the 13th movies. In 12th place, I have Jason X. In 11th place, I have Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. In 10th place, I have the Friday the 13th 2009 remake. At number 9, I have Friday the 13th Part 9, Jason Goes to Hell. Coming in at number 8, I have Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning. In 7th place, I have Part 7, The New Blood. Number 6, I have Friday the 13th Part 4, The Final Chapter. And now my top 5 movies out of the entire Friday the 13th franchise. Here we go. At number 5, I have Freddy vs. Jason. In 4th place, I have Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. And now, it comes down to the last 3. In 3rd place, I have Friday the 13th Part 3, 3D. In 2nd place, and trust me, when I say this is close, this is very close. In 2nd place, I have Friday the 13th Part 2. I freaking love this movie so much. Honestly, when I say it's probably one of the best horror sequels that I've ever seen, it really is. And of course, as I did with the Halloween franchise, the very first movie of Friday the 13th in 1980 that came out is my favorite of the entire franchise. Currently, I'm rewatching the Friday the 13th franchise because I'm showing my niece and her best friend the movies, and we're on Part 8. And so far, they like them. Similar to my Michael Myers and Dr. Loomis NECA action figures, I have Friday the 13th Part 2 Jason, Part 3, Part 6, and Part 7 in their accessories. And I'm looking to get Part 4, Part 5 Dream Sequence, and Part 5 Roy Burns Jasons as well to complete my collection. Not sure if I'll get the remake in the Jason vs. Freddy NECA figure, but who knows, maybe I will down the road. Here's an image of those figures so you can see what I'm talking about.
I also have my homemade Jason Voorhees mask.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have one final stop to make, and that's on Elm Street. Let's review the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. A Nightmare on Elm Street consists of 8 total movies, disregarding the remake, of course. So, counting the remake, it would be 9 total movies, which is the fewest movies out of the 3 franchises displayed right here. As you can see, I have my Freddy Krueger sweatshirt displayed because the design is on the back, so I thought there was really no point in me wearing it because you wouldn't be able to see it. So I have it displayed behind me. I'll put up a better video right now so you can see what it looks like. It says never sleep again because, as we all know, once you see Freddy Krueger in your dreams, or shall I say your nightmares, you're not going to sleep again. The very first A Nightmare on Elm Street came out in 1984 and was directed and written by Wes Craven, who, as we all know, is a very, very great director.
Robert Englund stars as the maniac Freddy Krueger, wielding his bladed glove to kill teens on Elm Street in their dreams. When one teenager, Nancy, played by the amazing Heather Langenkamp, falls asleep, she is haunted by Freddy. Her father, played by John Saxon, is the police lieutenant and is hiding a secret from her. He knows Fred Krueger, and so do all the other parents of the kids who are being tormented. We learn that Fred Krueger used to be a child molester and got away with it, so the parents of Springwood, or those who were on Elm Street, tracked him down and burnt him alive in his warehouse. Now Freddy is tormenting their teenage children in their sleep. This movie ends with Nancy bringing Freddy into the real world and destroying him. Or so we think. Wes Craven also made The Hills Have Eyes and the movie Scream. I also have this gift that my brother gave me, the Elm Street sign.
A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge, came out in 1985, 1 year later after the first one, which Wes Craven did not have a part in at all with this movie.
Freddy's Revenge is a great sequel, but not a lot of people's favorites. This movie has the famous bus scene in it. I also have a NECA action figure of this Freddy with his 2 demon child dogs and other accessories. This film stars Mark Patton as Jesse and Kim Myers as Lisa, and the teenage couple need to try and fight Freddy and kill him before he uses Jesse's body as a host to be able to kill more teens. A lot of people dislike this movie because the makers made it less scary by making Freddy not so dreamlike because they bring him into the real world early on in the film.
A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, Dream Warriors, came out February 27th, 1987, and that was directed by Chuck Russell. Wes Craven did return for Dream Warriors to help write it.
This movie is great. One of the best in the franchise for sure. Patricia Arquette stars as Kristen Parker, another teen being tormented by Freddy Krueger, and we also see the return of Heather Langenkamp as Nancy Thompson. This movie is a fun watch and feels very creative. Kristen's mother, mistaking the wounds for a suicide attempt, sends Kristen to a psychiatric ward, where she joins a group of similarly troubled teens. One of the doctors there is Nancy, who had battled Freddy some years before. And at the end of this movie, they all battle Freddy, and Nancy ends up killing Freddy by stabbing him with his own glove.
A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4 came out August 19th, 1988, 1 year from the third one.
The fourth Nightmare on Elm Street movie stars Tuesday Knight as Kristen Parker after Patricia Arquette couldn't return to the role. It also stars Lisa Wilcox as Alice Johnson. Kristen Parker, who has the ability to draw others into her dreams, wills her special ability to her new best friend Alice before her demise. Afterwards, she soon realizes that Freddy is taking advantage of that unknown power she now wields to pull a new group of teenage children into his foul domain. This movie has an amazing theme to it, which is also sung by Tuesday Knight and can be found in the attached links, and I'll also put it in the bio of this video.
A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, The Dream Child, came out August 11th, 1989, 1 year from the fourth one.
I'm going to read the description for this one this time because it sounds super cool. The taunting murderer is striking through the sleeping mind of Alice's unborn child. His intention is to be born again into the real world. The only one who can stop Freddy is his dead mother. But can Alice free her spirit in time to save her own son? What a storyline. They could have done certain things better in this one, but one of my favorite Freddy lines is in this film. Here it is.
It's a boy!
Nightmare on Elm Street Part 6, which is called Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, came out September 13th, 1991.
In this movie, Freddy travels to a different town to track down his long-lost daughter, which in the previous films we have heard nothing about. She catches on to his plan early on, and the two have a father-daughter battle that determines Freddy's fate once and for all. This is one of the horror movies that actually was true, sorta, to its title by putting final in it. Another great line that Freddy says is, "Every town has an Elm Street," which I showed in the intro to this review. One scene I love in this movie is when Freddy's talking to his daughter Catherine, and the cameraman is doing a circle around them both, almost like a panoramic shot. I find it really cool and creative.
On October 14th, 1994, Wes Craven returned to the Nightmare on Elm Street series. Wes Craven released A New Nightmare. It stood out to me because it does something very different where it's a movie inside a movie, and it makes you really appreciate him being a director and his style of directing.
New Nightmare mixes reality and fantasy and shows a real-life Freddy Krueger in the real world Heather Langenkamp's life, and how he haunts her and her son Dylan, played by Mike Hughes. This movie is amazing and super creative and definitely worth watching over and over again. We see a new look to Freddy Krueger as well.
And of course, on August 15th, 2003, Freddy vs. Jason was released.
Freddy vs. Jason struck horror fans everywhere and is a fun watch as we see the two classic horror legends battle each other to the death. This is one of those movies where fans who always say, "I wonder who would win," definitely want to watch. I enjoy this film mainly because we get some cool kills, lots of fight scenes, and the ending is iconic.
A Nightmare on Elm Street got a remake directed by Samuel Bayer in 2010.
The 2010 remake, produced by Michael Bay, stars Jackie Earle Haley as Freddy Krueger, and many people enjoy his performance, but not nearly as much as Robert Englund, who some people say was born for the role of Freddy. While those are big shoes to fill, I believe Jackie Earle Haley did a great job. I also enjoy Rooney Mara's performance as Nancy. The ending to this movie is awesome, and leaves you on a cliffhanger. I also enjoy this movie because we get to see more of Freddy's backstory and the true villain he was when he was fully human and wasn't a burned killer.
And now it is time for my rankings of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. In ninth place, I have the sixth installment of the franchise, Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. In eighth place, I have A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, The Dream Child. In seventh place, I have Freddy vs. Jason. In sixth place, I have the remake, the 2010 Nightmare on Elm Street. A lot of people, similar to some movies in both the Friday the 13th and the Halloween franchise, either hate it or like it. I was somewhere in the middle between hating it and liking it. So that's why it's kind of in the middle of my rankings. In 5th place, here we go, top 5 for A Nightmare on Elm Street. Drumroll please. I have A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. These next two are fitting because their part lines up with my ranking. So in 4th place, I have Part 4, The Dream Master. In 3rd place, my top 3, here we go. In 3rd place, I have Dream Warriors Part 3. And now my top 2 Nightmare on Elm Street movies. In 2nd place, I have 1994's Wes Craven's New Nightmare. And of course, as I did with the Friday the 13th franchise and the Halloween franchise, I have the original being my favorite, Nightmare on Elm Street, ladies and gentlemen, 1984, directed and written by Wes Craven, is my first movie in the rankings of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. That wraps up today's movie franchise review of me discussing the Halloween, Friday the 13th, and A Nightmare on Elm Street franchises. I hope you enjoyed. Like I said at the beginning of the video, if you haven't yet, please leave a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because Halloween 4, Halloween Lives, will be coming out this October, this Halloween. I hope you're looking forward to it as much as I am. Stay tuned for posters, trailers, and of course the movie itself.
Wait, before you go, I wanted to show you my bedroom door. I have my Sweet Dreams Freddy Krueger sign, my Halloween sign, and my Welcome to Camp Crystal Lake sign. The big 3 of horror. Here's my official rankings on Letterboxd of the 3 franchises I discussed in this review.
See you guys.
Movie reviews with San the Man at home, watching a simple plan. Pause, because here comes Jaws. Everywhere I go, I bring Psycho. It's an addiction when you watch Pulp Fiction. So listen to your intuition and start your subscription.
Start your subscription.